Hello, and welcome to the fourth installment of North Central Cinema. I'm Joseph W. Smith III. Call me Joe. In the last installment, we talked about some of the giants we had lost from the celebrity world in the last several weeks. Two of those were deeply involved in the world of cinema. One was Sidney Poitier, whom we talked about last time, and today we'll talk about director Peter Bogdanovich. Incidentally, Poitier and Bogdanovich did work together once, and they also died on the same day, January 6th. Now, last time I kind of did a tribute to Poitier. Bogdanovich had a very up and down career and a troubled personal life, so I'm going to focus mostly on his films. He is best known for The Last Picture Show from 1971, netting a whopping 8 Oscar nominations and winning supporting actress and actor for Cloris Leachman and Ben Johnson. Another big hit for him was Paper Moon, pairing father and daughter actors Ryan O'Neal and Tatum O'Neal. And Tatum then went on to become the youngest person ever to win a competitive Academy Award. She was only 10 at the time. After that, this was in the early 70s, Bogdanovich's career kind of floundered a bit. He made a bunch of flops that you probably haven't even heard of. Recovered a bit with a movie called Mask that was a hit both commercially and critically. He won a Grammy for his documentary of Tom Petty called Running Down a Dream. Bogdanovich was also a film scholar. He met with John Ford and Alfred Hitchcock. He did a number of interviews. He did some specials. He wrote 13 books on film. And today I'm going to highlight 2 of his movies. One is a little bit lesser known. That's virtually his first film, something called Targets from 1968. Targets is a thriller. It stars Boris Karloff in almost what was virtually his last role. He's very frail in the film, and it was a bit of a struggle to make it, reportedly. He plays an aging horror film star named Byron Orlock. See how the name is even a little bit similar to his. Bogdanovich appears as a fledgling director who is trying to convince Orlock to be in his film, making me wonder whether the film that he's trying to persuade Orlock to make is Targets. Kind of a head scratcher. Anyway, while we're dealing with that, a parallel plot emerges about a troubled young man who winds up going on a killing spree. He kills almost everyone in his family, then plants himself atop an oil storage tank and begins picking off cars on the highway, then goes on to a drive-in. And he sets himself up behind the drive-in screen and begins shooting at people in the cars. These 2 plots come together because Orlock is going to make a special guest appearance at that drive-in later on in the evening. The phrase ahead of its time is frequently used for Targets because of its strong anti-violence message and its reflections on gun control. It's incredible how easy it is for this young man to amass his arsenal of handguns, rifles, and ammunition. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But here's a couple of trivia tidbits about Targets. When you cue it up, the first actor you'll see on screen is Jack Nicholson. He's very young, so you might not even recognize him, but that's a film within a film. It's supposedly one of Orlock's films. It's an old, cheesy horror film from the 60s called The Terror. But you'll notice Nicholson there looking very young and handsome. Targets was photographed by the legendary Laszlo Kovacs, one of the finest lensmen in the business. He emerged into the public attention with Easy Rider. He also photographed Ghostbusters, which is a very handsome-looking film. And he did a little film with Jack Nicholson in the 70s called The King of Marvin Gardens, which the photography in that film it's not a great film, but the photography is absolutely out of this world. And third, about Targets, it is loosely based on the true story of Charles Whitman, a young man who in 1966 planted himself atop a water tower at the University of Texas and began sniping, resulting in a total of 16 deaths and 31 people were wounded. For me, Targets is not so much ahead of its time because of its gun control or anti-violence message as it is for its reflections on breaking the fourth wall. You know, these people go to the drive-in to see a horror film and be scared. And then the horror film starts shooting back at them. And they find, I think with the Orlok theme, what Bogdanovich is saying is that real life in the late 60s had become scarier than the kinds of movies Boris Karloff generally made, until he made this one. So it is a scary movie, a little downbeat. If you want something a little more cheerful, may I recommend this little piece of lunatic mayhem from 1972. It was Bogdanovich's follow-up to the very depressing Last Picture Show. It's called What's Up, Doc? It is a screwball comedy. Once Bogdanovich had sort of carved out his niche, Barbra Streisand kept saying that she wanted to work with him. So one of the studio execs came to Bogdanovich and said, look, Streisand keeps bugging me. If you were to make a film with her, what would you do? He said, well, I would make a comedy. I would cast her as a ditz. I would do something along the lines of Bringing Up Baby. And the film exec said, then do it. And out came this film. I'm not a huge Streisand fan, but she is very, very funny in this film. She is joined by Ryan O'Neal, the great Madeline Kahn, who works so often with Mel Brooks, and an actor that very few of you have ever heard of named Kenneth More. He's near and dear to my heart because my father was a film critic, and once in the 70s, he interviewed Moore, and Moore came to our home and also visited the middle school and talked to my class, which was really cool because he made a lot of big films in the 70s, particularly Young Frankenstein, which was a huge hit. What's Up, Doc? Has this wacky plot about 4 carrying bags that are all identical. Streisand's has nothing in it but clothes and a dictionary. There's one full of secret government papers, one with valuable jewels, and Ryan O'Neal's, God love him, he's this nerdy scientist. His is filled with igneous rocks. And they just keep getting swapped around, and everyone's running around after them and losing their minds. What's Up, Doc? Has, among other things, what is unquestionably the funniest car chase ever put on film through the streets of San Francisco. I think there are 4 cars and a bicycle involved. A quarter of the film's budget went to filming this. There's a scene toward the end where every car goes down a set of stairs, doing great damage to the stairs. They did not have permission from the city of San Francisco to make that scene, and I'm told that the stairs still reflect the damage done by those cars. Now, if you watch the film, there's one other thing you ought to know. O'Neal was just recovering from his triumph in Love Story, which was a blockbuster at the time. And the theme and tagline of Love Story was, love means never having to say you're sorry. Now, if you are a happily married man like me, you know that is a load of crap. Love is not never having to say you're sorry. That's crazy. So that shows up a little, and everyone knew this at the time they saw What's Up, Doc. So that shows up in a little bit in the film. And if you know all about that, it makes one scene a little bit funnier. So Targets and What's Up, Doc, along with some of the others Bogdanovich made. Now, eventually, we will get around to doing some actual film reviews here of something that's showing in the theater, but I did want to honor these 2 figures who passed on. If you're interested in film, you could grab a copy of my Under the Radar movie book. Targets is in here, and a film we talked about with Poitier from last time called The Defiant Ones is also in here. That's Under the Radar Movies. There's 300 titles in here, very easy to find. Or if you want, you can just write and make some suggestions or talk about movies or argue about movies. You could drop me an email at robwhitefan@gmail.com. That's ROBB and then whiteandfan@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks with more talk about the movies on North Central Cinema.
At UPMC, we're pioneering new ways to treat cancer, and we're working to prevent it. We're advancing new technology to look more closely at disease and helping you breathe easier. We perform the world's first heart-liver transplant, and we're experts at keeping your heart beating strong. We're a global team of more than 90,000, advancing care everywhere and delivering it closer to you. UPMC, life-changing medicine.